Next one. Did you guys feel pressure to go to university, or did you go because it was what you wanted to do and knew the end goal? Did we know where we were going to end up? Or?
I had no idea what the end goal is, and I don't think
Sure.
you need to know necessarily when you're that young, at the age of applying or
Occasionally you'll meet someone who is like, I've known since I was 16 years old, I wanted to be a vet, and that's where they actually end up.
Great, but
I think that's pretty unusual though. So yeah, did you know you wanted to go to university though, or?
I kind of have two answers to this. And I think I've mentioned this in another podcast. For me, there was a social pressure for sure among my peers and like my parents' friends' kids to go to university, and even from our teachers in high school. There was kind of this expectation or this preparation of you're taking university level math in this high school class. Therefore, the expectation is you're going to go to university, because there actually was a distinction now that I remember that. Even though I didn't end up going to university for math of any kind.
Sure.
There was absolutely a social pressure to go. At the same time, I don't think that that's what like made me go. I also know that my parents strongly encouraged me to go. And that's not because they, were academics of any kind. Actually, neither of them have a university degree. My father, I think, dropped out of first year university. So I was really the first person in my immediate family anyways, because my sister's younger than me, to go to university at all. So
that makes sense why your parents would have been
they wanted me to go.
Encouraging that.
But they also, and this is to their credit, not their fault, they also saw that I could do it. And they were looking at like my grades in high school, how I applied myself, how I could do everything almost independently. And that is where someone... that's a skill set that you can really use in university or college, right? So independent study and self-discipline and motivation. So they knew that I would excel. And even though there was times where I was like just wanting to go against my parents and be like, no, I'm going to go into graphic design, in part because, yes, I liked it, but I also think looking back, maybe I just wanted to spite them. Like you always want to do what your parents, the opposite of what your parents want you to do.
Sure.
But I think it's still possible, reflecting back, that I really did want that university experience. So I think it's possible that there was this social pressure to go, but that doesn't mean that I also didn't want to go myself. Like inside, there was something in me that wanted to see what it was like to go off, to move somewhere else, to go to my classes like an independent woman, have my textbooks. I'm fully responsible for everything. No one's holding my hand. No one's babysitting me like high school I'm comparing to. And I'm just going to like go find my own path and start my career. So there was absolutely that kind of seed planted in me, maybe from social pressures. But it was something that I ultimately wanted to do. And I'm glad that I did it.
Sure. So I kind of have a bit of almost an opposite experience. Like there was always this expectation in my family that I would go to university. I think like both my parents are pretty highly educated. I have an older brother and sister who both have multiple degrees. So like it would have been looked at as strange if I hadn't gone to university. So it was almost an assumption I would go. I remember being in the last year of high school and thinking like, I don't really know what I want to do. I'm just sort of going to university just because is kind of the next logical step that kind of makes sense, and I don't know what else I would do, right? But I briefly like looked into, do I just want to go into the trades and make a bunch of money? There's a lot of lucrative careers that don't require you spending 4 or 5 years in school, right?
Yeah.
As much as we are like these pro-education people, and I think you framed it the right way at the beginning, that like we see a lot of YouTubers who maybe don't advocate for post-secondary education, so you've kind of felt like you were filling that gap. At the same time, I don't want to say neither of us are people who are saying everyone has to or should go to university necessarily, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. And we should clarify that, because I think in the past I've really narrowed down my viewpoints on post-secondary. And just for simplicity's sake, I'd say things like, yeah, stay in school, go to university. And it was like 30 seconds of a video. Sure. And so because I wasn't really elaborating on that or had a space to like truly talk about like all my thoughts or respond to people in a meaningful way, my other thoughts aren't included. And that includes things like it's not just university we're trying to push people towards. It's only if that makes sense for the career path that you want. If the career path you want requires university or even graduate level degrees, then I would encourage that. But if it doesn't, and you want to go into the trades or more applied programs or fields of study, then there's absolutely, you know, maybe some education or vocational classes or other forms of skills, you know, that you can go into instead. And it's really just what makes the most sense for you and for the outcome that you want.
You know, it's funny, when I was in high school too, I remember at one point thinking, you know, I was very motivated by money, I think, at one point. So I remember just trying to Google, what are the most lucrative careers?
Lawyer.
And so lawyer was one of the ones that I seemed kind of interested in.
Yeah.
But I remember at one point I was like convinced I wanted to be an anesthesiologist. Because I guess I must have found some sort of article online that said those people make a ton of money.
Because they just put people to sleep all day? Is that what it is?
That's what it is, yeah. I guess it's a highly specialized thing within the medical field, but it's also one where you have to be in school for a very long time, I think. Anyway, so yeah, we didn't know what we wanted to do or where we were going to end up necessarily. But yeah.
And it's okay to not know right away.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, we both got kind of lucky in terms of how we ended up.